Customs and Border Patrol, the agency that's responsible for protecting the borders of the United States, which is an important job. If you have a nation, one of the things that defines a nation, in my humble opinion, is a border. You're sort of defining where the country starts and where it stops. So the border is a pretty big deal. We spent a lot of time talking about it. It's been a problem for a long time. As long as I've been alive, I've seen all sorts of different proposals. Republicans come in, Democrats come in, and nobody can solve it. But Joe Biden, fortunately, is now here to save America. And he put Kamala Harris in charge of this. Back in March, said, "You're very smart. We know you can solve this problem." So he just kind of gave her this just really big bag of garbage and said, "This is your problem now. Why don't you go fix it?" So she's trying to do that. And we're going to catch up to speed on what her trips have looked like thus far. But before we do, something very interesting happened. Very conveniently, we are getting new reports of immigration numbers from CBP, Customs and Border Protection. In fact, they posted this on Twitter here today. I want to show you what this is telling us. So it says in May, swap that over to the pen there. In May, CBP encountered. So let's pay close attention to this word. What does this word encountered mean, right? Does this mean apprehended? Does this mean these people are in custody? Does this mean that we saw them through binoculars? Does this mean people who are naturally going through the immigration process, right? Are they being processed for asylum? What does that mean? Well, we're going to look into it. Now, they say it is more than 180,000 persons attempting entry along the southwest border. So they encountered more than 180,000 people at the border. This represents a 1% increase over April. They're going to give us three different things: a press release, enforcement stats, and then what the definition of encounters is, which we're going to take a look at here in a minute. So at first glance, you take a look at this, you go, oh, 1% increase over April. Not even a big deal. So what are we talking about? Why are you wasting our time, Rob? It's 1%. What's the big deal? Well, it's because that was over last month. But let's take a look at what the numbers look like over last year. Kind of a different story. This is what we see here from Border Patrol, same data. And you're going to notice that in blue, this is the 2021 fiscal year to date. You're going to see that, yep, if this is April and this is May, certainly it looks like it's kind of flatlining here, right? So we're not seeing much of an increase. It is, in fact, a 1% increase. But if we compare it back to 2019, where we see this other big spike, pretty big dramatic increase. We go from about, let's say, 140. Let's see if we can actually find that number. So in 2020, in May, we had 144,000 people in May. This year, we have 180,000, right? So it's a dramatic increase over 2019. And you can see that it's really out of alignment with some of the other years. So 2020, of course, we've all sort of written that off as an aberration just because people are just not, it was COVID. Everything was lost that year. And so in 2019, that's kind of the next closest variable. Another close year, you might say, would be 2018, which would be down here. And so those numbers are way down. So what we're seeing is a major spike, right? There's no question about it. The numbers are showing you that. And there was something else I wanted to point out. If you just look at the total numbers in general, right, what we're going to see here is right now the total for the entire year for 2021, this number right here is 929,868 people. Okay, but we're missing 4 months for the rest of the fiscal year. Where's June? Where's July? Where's August? Where's September? Now, if you notice that, even though we had a big spike here in May of 2019, right, that was 144,000 people, the highest month that year. The total for the entire year, because we saw major dips, major pullbacks here, and a major dip here, right? There's only one major spike here. And so if you sort of measure this difference, it is really, really significant. In 2019, we only had just under 1 million encounters, right? And remember that they're defining this as encounters here. This is not anything that, we're going to find what the definition is, but just keep that in mind. We're talking about encounters. So in 2019, then we get 1 million. And in 2021, in May, we have 4 months left. We're already at 1 million, right? Or already at just about 70,000 shy of 1 million. So the numbers are very, very high. And you'll notice also that it's a little bit different because we had a big spike in May. And if you're somebody from Arizona, you know why this is, because May's a nice month. It's pretty nice to kind of get out there and be outside. But in June and July and August, it is basically like the seventh circle of hell. It's kind of awful. We always ask ourselves, what the heck are we doing living here? This is sort of an insult to mankind that we would be so arrogant to think that we could survive in 120-degree boiling, scalding hot weather. All right, but I'm not mad about it. It is something that is part of just life, I guess. But the point here is that people are not traveling during these times typically because it's just too damn hot. In June, July, and August, it literally gets 120 degrees in some parts of the desert, which means you die out there. So it's not good. I've had heat exhaustion many times in my life. It's not a good thing. Back when I was doing construction. So I want to show you now what I certainly expect to happen. There will probably be a similar downtrend, right? Like we see, because it's just going to be too hot. And so now we know in May, if we just sort of follow the trend back through the years, we can say, let's follow the same pattern in 2018, back in May, sort of a peak, and then it dipped down in 2018. Really, the only aberration here would be 2020, right? We already know why that is. 2020 is just a written off year, but we also know after about May in 2019, we also saw a drop. So presumably you can expect that we're going to see a similar drop this year in 2021. And what does that mean? That means that everything that Kamala Harris did is working, isn't it? It's all going to be working here soon. You're going to see CNN come out here. Oh, wow, the June numbers came out. In May, it was a 1% increase, but Kamala Harris hadn't made her trips yet. Now that she has, we're seeing a pretty nice decline there. Thank you, Kamala Harris. She was the one who went out there and really got down to the root problem of this. So I'm waiting for the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, Brian Stelter, and the rest of them all to come out and say, what a heroic woman she is. She really put a damper on that problem, didn't she? And lo and behold, the numbers are just going to show us that it's going to be trending down anyway. So we're going to give her, all the credit that she's due at that moment in time. But I still wanted to point out this number. What a massive number this is. So we think about these numbers, I think probably like we think about some of the budget numbers. We were kind of poking fun at this yesterday, saying that, $400 billion, that's like, is that like lunch for Congress, or what are they doing? They just spend money. Everybody jokes $100 for a hammer, $200 for a screwdriver, and the list goes on and on. We know that there's a lot of bloat and a lot of wasted money, and it's sort of hard to fathom the numbers and sort of wrap your head around and quantify them. Same concept when we're talking about people. Okay, we're talking about 1 million people. It's a lot of people, but have you ever seen 1 million people? I mean, it's sort of maybe on some pictures from the March on Washington or something like that. But it's really hard for the average person to sort of fathom what that is. When you go to a sports stadium, it could be 20,000 people at a small venue. It could be 70,000 people at a huge venue. You could go to a golf event here. Sometimes 100,000 or 1 million people may work their way through over 4 or 5 days. But it's still hard to quantify. And what we're looking at here are just numbers. And this one says 929,000 people. Right? And we know that from Border Patrol in May, they said 180,000 people came in. So let's see if we can quantify that. Let's see if we can sort of put that in terms that we can all understand, just so we can measure this in a way that resembles something that we can relate to. Now, we are seeing here what is a 747, okay, from British Airways. Big, big, big plane. One of the biggest commercial jet airliners that we have in operation. And you'll notice that if you've ever flown this, you fly this over to Europe, and it's a big one. It's got this double decker here, and inside it is big, right? We got, looks like this one is sort of seated 3 here, 4 in the middle. I've seen them, I think, 2s and 2. I think I've seen them 2, 5, and 2, and 3, 4, and 3, like we see here. So it's a big aircraft, right? So now imagine this, all sorts filled with people. We have 180,000 people. And a plane like this can fit 416 people if you have 3 classes in there. That was the number I found. And so it's 432 planes in 1 month. 432 planes filled with people landing every month. So if you divide that by 30 days, that's 14 planes every day just landing, okay, of people just coming into the country. And this is not commentary on those people. I know that's the first thing that people say when you start going down this road. Oh, well, you're a racist. Those are people who need our help in America and all that. I get all of that. Love that. If people want to be a part of this country, I want to facilitate that in a way that makes sense, not in a way that encourages people to pick up their families and drag them across the scalding desert, subjecting themselves to abusive coyotes, rape, assault, kidnapping, Lord knows what else, if not outright death. So it's a horrendous thing that we're doing. I think it's a humanitarian crisis, absolutely. And it's being caused on the back of our governmental policy. And it's 432 747s every month. 14 planes every day, just dropping people off, right? And the country has to deal with that. And so what are we going to do? Well, let's see. Let's dig into the report, though, before we see what Kamala is doing. CPB says that it announces its operational update. So they give us the number. This is from U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Protection. It says that they encountered 180,034 people attempting entry along the southwest border. Okay, this represents a 1% increase. Single adults continue to make up the majority of these encounters. In May, CPB expelled 112,000 individuals. CPP continues to expel single adults and family units that are encountered pursuant to CDC guidance. 62% of all result in expulsion. Okay, so a lot of those people are in fact going back. Encounters along the border of unaccompanied children and single minors from countries dropped again by 23%, which is great, but it's still 10,000 encounters. 10,000 unaccompanied children and single minors. 10,000. Okay? Massive. That was compared with 13,000 in April. So yeah, it's great. It's a 23% drop, but there's still 10,000 kids coming across the border. Encounters of family units also dropped by 31%, down to 22,000. The large number of expulsions during the pandemic has contributed, they say, to the larger than usual number of non-citizens making multiple border crossing attempts, right? And means total encounters somewhat overstate the unique individuals arriving at the border. So it's sort of like multiple attempts. So it's like the difference between, all right, so 38% of encounters in May were individuals who had at least one prior encounter in the previous 12 months, compared to an average 1 year. Okay. Now it says life-saving rescues. So smuggling organizations are abandoning migrants in remote and dangerous areas, leading to a dramatic rise in the number of rescues. So in May 2021, 7,000 rescues nationwide. They've rescued 35% more individuals in 2021 than all of fiscal year 2020. So we're not even through the full fiscal year yet. We got 4 months left on their data. They're already conducting more rescues than they did in the entirety of 2020. And it's because these smugglers are just saying, no, you're just gone. You're out. You're out on your own. Sorry. Why is that? Part of their argument is that, no, it's because that we were throwing everybody out during the pandemic, which is a very convenient way of sort of retroactively assigning blame to the prior administration. Oh, no, we're seeing all of these people come because Trump was responsible for throwing them out, so they're coming back now. That's why we have a surge. It doesn't have anything to do with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris saying and changing policy to incentivize people to come. That's been confirmed by multiple people that are the actual leaders in the South countries, in the Southern countries. Migrant protocol protections. Let's see here. January, Department of Homeland Security suspended new enrollments into Migrant Protection Protocols program, which returned certain non-citizens to Mexico pending removal. Shortly thereafter, then, Biden issued executive order directing the secretary to consider a phased strategy for the safe and orderly entry into the United States, consistent with public safety and health. Then on February 19th, they began processing into the United States those previously enrolled. They worked with partners, blah, 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 10,000 enrolled. June 1, after completing, Secretary Mayorkas finally terminated the program. Yeah, right. And those are the changes that we're talking about. Unaccompanied children in custody. So what this is saying, folks, is that there was a program in place. On January, they suspended new enrollments, made some changes. Mayorkas, formally terminated the program. They're working for an orderly entry into the United States, consistent with public health and safety. Got it. All right. So unaccompanied children in custody. The average daily number of children in custody has decreased significantly to 640 in May from 2,895 in April, which is great. The average daily number of children. Okay, daily. So it's gone down from about 3,000 to about 700, right? 640, from 2,800 to 640 every day, it sounds like. In April, unaccompanied children, they spent an hour of 92 hours in custody. In May, that was down to 26. So we're seeing some good improvements there, actually. That's great. The sustained progress is a result of the steps that DHS took to re-engineer stuff. They designated FEMA to come in and deal with it. Drug seizures. So Border Patrol agents, they are saying that nationwide seizures, drug seizures were up 18% in May from April. Cocaine interceptions decreased 18%. Meth increased 53%. Heroin increased 7%, and fentanyl increased 9%. CBP continues to see a surge in fentanyl seizures, and they say here that seizures in fiscal year 2021 through May are 56% higher than all of 2020. Wow, that's amazing, right? Let's read that one more time. Seizures in fiscal year 2021 through May are 56% higher than all of fiscal year 2020. And we still got 4 months left. Fentanyl is just being brought across the border in boatloads. And that is the most dangerous molecule, my friends. It is so dangerous. It's just killing people left and right. It is a horrendous thing. And I hear from a lot of people who are experimenting with this and sort of taking it like it's awful. Horrendous. Okay, let's take a look at some of the data here. Again, we knew what the numbers are. So May, if we take a look over here, it is 180,000 people came across versus almost 977,000 that came across in 2019. So we have May 2021 versus May 2019. It's about 35,000 more people. And you can see what this looks like on this chart, right? Single adults. Let's just break this down by demographic here. So fiscal year 2021, the adults, very high relative to all of the other years. Why would that be, right? Here we have, it looks like FMUA. What does that stand for? We got minors over here, kind of roughly around the same numbers. These are all about the same. We have a big spike in 2020 for FMUA, but I don't know what number I don't know what that signifies. But you can see here we have a big spike this year, absolutely. So we'll see what happens. Now, this is how they're defining these encounters. Remember, I mentioned, what does that mean? What does encounters mean? Well, here are the 4 categories. So we have accompanied minors. It's individuals in a family unit. That's what that word means. FMUA. So FMUA. So that would be individuals in a family unit. Then we have single adults, and then we have unaccompanied children. So in 2019, we had people in a family unit coming through heavily. Then in 2020, we have single adults. So that's interesting. I wonder why that changed. All right, so then we go ahead further, and we're going to just see some more graphics here. But you see that there are really 2 agencies that are responsible for checking this stuff out. Border Patrol, and then we have the Office of Field Operations, and so they're sort of breaking down their numbers. Border Patrol down 0.1%, but OFO is up 55%. So you look at numbers like that, why is that? All right, so a lot of numbers, a little bit kind of, grading a little bit, but the point is a lot of people are coming across, and it is sort of significantly higher than the prior numbers, but it's not just 1 month. It looks like it's sort of plateauing across April and May, and so we'll be very curious to see what the June numbers look like. Now, as we know, the Washington Examiner is confirming for us that more than 38,000 children who cross the border alone are released into the U.S. And so it is, it's about the kids. Think about the children, as they say. Last year, or early on during Trump's presidency, this is all we heard about. Kids in cages. Remember, kids in cages. Everybody was losing their minds over this stuff. So let's talk about the children. It's been a year. Been a couple of years. Let's see. More than 38,000 children who migrated to the U.S. from countries that came across the southern border. Without a parent, they've been released throughout the country since Joe Biden took office. So I didn't do the 747 analysis on that one, but it's a lot. It's a lot of 747s. The figure represents the highest number of migrant children to be discharged from government custody at any point in U.S. history. We're having a lot of historical things happening, right? Yesterday we talked about inflation. We talked about the Federal Reserve balance sheet. We're getting to historical levels across a couple different things here. Same with migrant children now. Children began showing up at the border in high numbers in late February, weeks after the Biden administration chose to stop turning away unaccompanied children. You're kidding. So you're telling me that if they say we're not going to turn away unaccompanied children, that more unaccompanied children show up? That's shocking. All children had been barred from entering the U.S. following a CDC rule. But in March, they adjusted that rule. Nearly 17,000 of the 38,000 are released to adult sponsors over the past 4.5 months. Were released in May alone. So they're ramping this up a bit. According to Health and Human Services, they said in her opening statement, that they're picking up speed. Biden administration insists that the border is not in a state of crisis, despite its having 10 emergency child care centers open nationwide to house more than 18,000 migrant children being held across government agencies as of Wednesday. And somebody flagged this for me. I think that actually in Scottsdale, they have something like that in motion. Somebody sent that, I think, on Twitter to me, or actually that may have been over at Locals. So they're propping up all over the place because it's a lot of people. We have all these airplanes full of people just flying in every day. The number of children, they're not actually flying in, folks. The number of children who came across without a parent or guardian has soared from 5,700 in January to more than 9,000 in March. It's a lot. So the agency is saying that we've got success. Health and Human Services says that searches for a family member in the country are done. The process has historically taken for more than a month, but Biden administration has sped it up to just under 4 weeks. Okay, so typically it takes more than a month, but now it's just under 4 weeks. So that's great, right? So it goes from let's say what? Just over a month is 32 days. Just under a month is 30 days, if it's a month, given on that particular month. So it's a good job. I want to stress that this expedited process of theoretically 1 day does not eliminate background checks for parent or guardian. This expedited process streamlines the procedures and eliminates bureaucracies in order to avoid unnecessarily prolonging the time that the children remain in government custody. So again, that's great. I love it that they're being less incompetent as the days go by. That's great because they caused the problem. So it's good that they're fixing it. Well done, guys. All right, so we've been following Kamala along as she's been wagging her finger down in Guatemala, then in Mexico. Now she's going on Univision and wagging her finger at them too. So let's take a look. Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary under Trump, posted a video today that we're going to take a look at. And she's quoting here that says, "I'm not finished," coming from Kamala Harris. She says another cringeworthy answer from Kamala about whether she will go down to the border. And all a pundit, big fan of his work, even though I disagree with him about 80% of the time. He's over at Hot Air. He says, there's that Harris charm, right? And he's a great writer, and I love his work, so go check him out. But he says, there's that Harris charm, and he's dead right. Here it is. You ready for this? Brace yourselves, folks. This is the charisma. It's going to solve all of Americans' problems right now. Here it is.
Hey, I've said I'm going to go to the border. And
when are you going to the border, Vice President?
The administration has asked... I'm not finished. I've said I'm going to the border. And also, if we are going to deal with the problems at the border, we have to deal with the problems that cause people to go to the border, to flee to the border. And that is the root causes. So my first trip as Vice President of the United States was to go, in terms of a foreign trip, to Guatemala, to be on the ground there, to address and to be informed of the root causes. Why are the people of Guatemala leaving?
Do you have a date?
¿Tiene una fecha para su viaje a la frontera para ver la situación con sus propios ojos?
I will keep you posted.
I have to...
All right. So, not ideal if you're the vice president and somebody with presidential ambitions. This is not something that I particularly get bent out of shape about. I don't really, care how she deals with the media. Honestly, I think it's sort of poor form. Somebody that I think would be at that caliber would be able to deal with them better. But, I think that we see this a lot from politicians all the time. I don't have any particular problem when they get mouthy with the media. Donald Trump did this all the time with the media. I liked his style a little bit better. Remember, he used to say, excuse me, right? 100 times until they excused him, and then he would sort of interject. And so, Kamala's trying something different a little bit. And Donald Trump rightfully got called an a-hole for that a lot of the time, right? He got sort of skewered for that. God, he's such a jerk. Everybody said that all the time. I have people who voted against him. I know people who voted against him just because of that, right? It had nothing to do with policy. It had to do with Donald Trump was kind of a jerk, right? Is what they said. I didn't agree with that ever. I thought that he was hilarious, and I kind of liked his style, candidly. But I understand how it can rub people the wrong way, which is exactly, I think, what this is doing with Kamala. And so, when I see this stuff, it's just kind of funny to say, man, it's just not effective the way she does it. I think Trump's was effective, at least, because he sort of, looked looked kind of, tough, I would say. Here she, and I know this is going to go down, this is a feminist critique type of thing. It's just not, it's not good politically. I mean, you would have an answer at this point. It's just not in the style or whatever. It's just not a good response. We've criticized this like 5 times on this show. She's been asked a number of times, are you going to go to the border, right? And I've even said this, that she's kind of in between a rock and a hard place at this point in time, because I understand the need to, to go down to the border and show why you are there. You're the leader of this issue. You've been elected the czar. You've been elected the vice president or the president, combined with Joe Biden. And he has delegated the responsibility for solving the border to you. And people are asking you to go down to the border. You've decided not to do that. You go down to Guatemala, then over to Mexico. And you say it's important that you go down there, that you physically show up in person there in order to convey the importance of everything that needs to be solved. The root causes, that's why you're there. So people want you to pay that same respect down at the American border. If you're going to go down there to Guatemala and show them that courtesy, why don't you show our own Border Patrol that courtesy? And this has been an issue 3 or 4 times already. And so again, like the 4th time she gets asked about it again, and she still has no answer for it. And so, it's just like, as a politician, you would imagine, like where are her advisors? Is somebody coming to her and saying, all right, listen, we've told you 5 times, you're going to get asked about this. Here's what to say. And again, it's not even really about the I'm not finished or whatever she said. I'm not finished yet. And remember, she did this back during the debates with Donald Trump. It was a weird thing. She said, I'm speaking. Excuse me, I'm speaking. It was her version of the excuse me, but she's just not good at it. And she's using it in a way that's just like, give them a date already. Just, yes, on June 7th, I'll be there. Or, July 7th, whatever. All right. So anyways, enough about Kamala. Gosh. All right. Anyways, so now that the whole thing is well underway, she's down there trying to fix the border. We have new information that there was a marijuana bust that is just massive. And I can't wait to show you these pictures because they're wild. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department uncovered the largest drug bust in its history on Tuesday. They say that the cartels are to blame. So the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, they seized tens of millions of dollars worth of illegal marijuana growing in dozens of greenhouses in Southern California. Now, California, marijuana is legal over there as it is here in Arizona. And so you might be asking yourselves, well, why are they seizing all of this stuff? Because there are still rules about growing it and it's still illegal federally. So 23 people were arrested in a massive raid across Antelope Valley, 70 miles north of Los Angeles. They are currently bulldozing now multiple illegal growing sites this week. Recreational marijuana became legal in California in 2018, but it opened up a black market for Mexican drug cartels. So Tuesday's bust follows residents complaining to local authorities about illegal growing operations, stealing the area's water supply. Said Sheriff Villanueva during a news conference. The largest bust yesterday was a 10-acre plot housing more than 70 greenhouses with an estimated probably $50 million worth of marijuana. I think there's a missing word there. This came over from the sheriff. This is Sheriff Alex Villanueva. He says a major joint operation underway in the high desert to take down illegal cartel-operated marijuana groves, that they're impacting farmers, families, and businesses. We've teamed up with everybody to eradicate these groves. Let's take a look. So look at this thing. Look at this operation, right? It's almost like out of a movie or something that you see on Netflix, right? I mean, it's massive, right? And this is happening in California, just north of Los Angeles. So this is one tent just filled with marijuana plants, as you can see. And they've got just a number of them. You can't sort of get the scale there, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably, paired up on both sides. So very, very large. We have Supervisor Catherine Barger says, I would like to thank Sheriff Villanueva for the impactful work of eradicating the marijuana, evil marijuana. We've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So probably 10 rows, right? Just packed. Look at this. Got a whole system. So they're stealing a bunch of water, it sounds like. The massive influx brings increase in crimes, including human trafficking, does damage to the desert, environmental damage, groundwater pollution, diverts water resources, negatively impacts the housing market. So, it's Not a good thing. This is what it looks like from the sky. Look at this thing. Can you believe that? Out in the middle of nowhere. Just setting up shop. Kind of crazy. Villanueva said that they're yes to assess the total amount of marijuana seized on Tuesday, but he said officials measure it in tons. Lancaster mayor said the operation of about 500 Los Angeles sheriff deputies and DE agents found $380 million worth of infrastructure and marijuana. Oh my goodness. The sheriff said some of the grow operations had unspecified cartels operating the sites and stealing millions of gallons of water from the arid region, currently experiencing an extreme drought. He said these illegal growing operations are dangerous. We're 300 miles away from the border, they said. We have one of the largest illegal drug operations happening in the backyard in the high deserts of Los Angeles, said Congressman Mike Garcia. It's crazy. Local officials urged Biden to secure the border, contribute the necessary funding for police as cartels run wildly on either side. President Biden's disastrous policies, according to Zero Hedge, are chipping away at America's law and order, and securing the border needs to happen before it's too late. So, woo, that's a lot. 380 million right in California. You know, I think there was that one, I think Netflix series like Narcos or something where they built all of that on a bunch of cartel land down in Mexico, I believe it was, but this is in California. All right. Now, some governors are kind of getting tired of it, and so they're going to start taking some action, which is what the system is built for. When the federal government doesn't act, we've got a federalist system where sometimes the states can start acting. Let's see if this goes anywhere. This is from Governor Greg Abbott. He says that Texas will build a border wall amid Biden's willful and wanton disregard for the laws. So he came out and he said that they're allocating $1 billion in its fiscal year towards border security, they said. He was on the Ingram Angle. They talked about that. So he's joining the program for the border near Del Rio. Said he's had enough of the White House's willful disregard for the border. He says to make a fine point on it, we have to build a border wall. I've been down here talking to people at the Rio Grande Valley. They're being way overrun. It's reprehensible. It's disastrous what the Biden administration has done. So he condemned Biden for ending the Remain in Mexico policy that Trump forged with the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, which staved off some of the influx of migrants as they were instructed to file for asylum in Mexico before crossing into the U.S. Right? Yeah, and we've talked about this many times here. The Biden administration has abandoned the border. He says, we're not taking it like a joke in Texas. Harris, notably guffawed when Lester Holt recently asked her about the crisis at the border. So, yeah, all right. So more border stuff. Let's take a look at some of the questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. First one in the house here is from Want to Know, says Gardner Brown, former PM of Britain, said here at the G7 to figure out who lives and dies in the world. Yes, it's an important meeting, but needs to be decided. I couldn't believe he came out and said this on camera on an interview. Yeah, I did not see that. I've not been paying attention to the G7 because it's just a bunch of bureaucrats, the worst. Sharon says, looks to me like if things keep going the way they are in this country, all those folks trying to come in might soon find they might as well stay at home. Yeah, that's a good point. Right, we'll see. We've got Leafy Bug is in the house. Says Kamala 2024 ain't going to happen. She's Michelle Obama's placeholder. Get ready. Oh, man. Do you think Michelle Obama runs? I don't think Michelle Obama runs. I don't think so. I think Kamala runs. I don't know how. I mean, honestly, like the Republicans, they've got a pretty strong field. If Trump runs again, that would be a scene. So that would be something. But they've got DeSantis, right? DeSantis, between DeSantis and Greg Abbott from Texas, they're sort of like one-upping each other, right? DeSantis comes out and bans CRT. Abbott comes out. He's like, oh, yeah? Well, watch what we do. And then now Abbott's doing the border wall. I'm expecting DeSantis to come out and say, well, we're just going to disconnect Florida. How about that? We're gonna disconnect from Georgia. Who knows? But it is, I think, a light bench on the Democrat side. I mean, they've got Biden, the incumbent. So unless he doesn't run again, which he kind of said that he wasn't, who is the next in line? Is it Kamala? She's a terrible politician and not a great person on top of it. So I think people realize that. So who else would it be? I don't know. Empty bench there. LT13 says she thinks she sounds like a powerful woman, but it really makes her sound like a blank. Her I'm speaking like she did to Pence is 2 nails down a chalkboard. It's irritating and rude. It is, right? It is. I think, so I read another article. I tried to find it and I couldn't find it because I couldn't remember the title. But apparently, this is a known problem for her. And they have gotten her some training and some, media conversational work and coaching, but doesn't look like it's taking. But you would imagine, like, on the easy stuff, the low-hanging stuff, like, you've been asked this question like 4 or 5 times already. Are you going to go down to the border, and if so, when? Why don't they have a talking point for that? It's kind of mind-blowing, really. It's like political 101, you would guess. All right, last question here is from Furby Slayer, says, this is why legalization isn't the answer. It just means more government involvement. Decriminalize it completely so people can do their own thing. I understand what you're saying. I think what Furby's saying is that if you start to sort of like incrementally, legalize marijuana, what you're doing then is slapping a bunch of government regulations and taxes and putting it in, marijuana stores, and this person can sell it, this person can buy it, got to have that card or this card. I think what Furby's saying, just deregulate it, decriminalize it, don't have any laws about it, period. Just like if you want to go pick an orange off the tree in your backyard, nobody cares about that. Same thing here, right? Not a bad approach. I think it's something that is heavily overly criminalized. I like where the trend is going, at least as it comes to criminal law. All right, so thank you for those questions. Those all came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We appreciate your support over there. There's a lot of good stuff that you can get, a free copy of my book. We have monthly locals meetups. We have a law enforcement interaction training that we're doing tomorrow. So if you catch that, that'd be great. But we have other channels as well down in our description below, crypto channel, as well as an R&R law group channel. So be sure to check those out, and we appreciate all your support. All right.